We're here today with David Gregory, host of Meet the Press, the seminal political talk show that airs on NBC on Sunday mornings. And we've upgraded our red couch to this amazing studio. Thanks for having us, David.
You bet. Welcome. Glad to share our space with you.
Thank you. So we're huge admirers of what you do here at Meet the Press.
Thank
and
you.
We really value great journalism and its role in moving society forward. So what drew you to this profession?
Well, I think for me, I was always incredibly curious, and I think as a teenager in particular, I was just drawn to how fast-moving news was, how it was always changing. To me, there was great ambiance, particularly about television news, the idea of being taken someplace else, the idea of being kind of at the center of the action. So for me, I think what I was always drawn to is the idea of being a participant, not with a point of view, but being close up in that point, from that perspective, being where the action was on a particular story. And that's still what drives me. That's still what I love.
When you look back at your career, what's been the most intriguing or shocking story that you've covered? Well,
I still think 9/11 is what looms so large. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, that I had the opportunity to be covering the George Bush White House through 9/11, covering it from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and what I think was such a significant time in our history, and will be that way for many years and for centuries to come because of what that attack represented. So to be there was shocking, it was incredibly sad, but it was also endlessly interesting. The politics, the policy, the reorientation of the world. You know, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. That's before my time. But 9/11 was really at the heart of my reporting career. And that was an event that changed America, changed the world. And we'll be seeing the repercussions of that for some time to come, just as the JFK assassination had such reverberations over the years.
You've seen so much come through this newsroom. What story do you think is underreported that we need to learn more about?
Well, I think there are stories that really touch people, that touch important questions like how we're raising our kids, what they want them to know. I think bullying is an example. You know, bullying is a story that any of us who have young kids in school are thinking about dealing with, trying to protect our kids against. And then, you know, I'm a sports fan and I see this ridiculous, awful behavior in the NFL, and you know, I think it's just a great opportunity for journalism to take this on in a holistic way and say, this is something that's happening in a sport that is hugely popular around the world, that makes a huge amount of money. How do we take this kind of story and make it a bigger story about bullying? So I think what gets underreported is the ability to connect some of these eye-popping stories to some of the struggles that people are dealing with in their own lives. What we know about news is that stories get hot and then they fade, but it doesn't mean that the issue fades.
Right.
You know, I mean, we see that in stories like Syria. You know, Assad may not be using chemical weapons, now he's just starving his people. You know, in North Korea, we don't even pay attention to the fact that the leadership there is starving their people. So I think we have to just remind ourselves that we follow the action, but there are still issues that are really, really important that affect a lot of people that don't always get the attention that it deserves.
Now, you guys have a great magazine on Flipboard, and you've just passed 1 million flips. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited about it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the strategy of the magazine and what you're going for?
Well, look, I mean, this is a television program, but we understand we need to be more than that. You know, I don't know that in television news, in network television news, we're going to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to figuring out how to reach a new generation. But we're certainly going to be big players, and we're going to try to be as innovative and creative as we can. And what I certainly have a sense of is that there's more of an expectation now that news will find people. I know that if I'm putting my oldest son to bed, he likes me to sit in the room with him for a few minutes. I've got my iPad out. I want to read some more. I want to read the news. I go to Flipboard. I go to our magazine. I go to other magazines that I've created because I want to get to the content that I need. And the whole point about curation to me that I think is so important is that what people still want, they want someone to say, hey, take a look at this.
Right.
Hey, you want to see this. You should know about this. Because we still are sort of drawn to people that we trust to make those decisions for us. Otherwise, what do we do on Twitter? We create timelines, we create feeds of people we want to follow, because we want somebody to basically, we want to filter information through someone, something. So that's been our approach to Flipboard. We think that Meet the Press can't just be a Sunday morning experience. It's got to be a 7-day-a-week experience. And what we think Flipboard does uniquely for us is be able to share with the audience, hey, this is what's kind of driving our conversation as the week goes on. We're following events. We are trying to see what's going to drive the story forward. We are not a daily news operation in that sense. So we're trying to identify big ideas, big trends, the things that will really last from one week to another. So I think part of it is transparency, to say, hey, come on in. This is what's driving our thinking. This is stuff that we're sharing, that we're reading. We'll share it with you. And we're doing that work. We're having these conversations. It's what I do every day. I read a tremendous amount every day. I'm talking to people. I'm reading. So we want to use the magazine then, I think, to sort of to broadcast all of that, but to also connect to things like, you know, I'm on Instagram, more for kind of fun moments of my life, or, you know, what I see. And then for me, Twitter is kind of a news feed, so I can share some of that through the magazine as well.
And what do you like to read? What is your media diet? You
know, I'm trying to focus a lot more on longer form reading, you know, whether it's books or lengthier publications. Obviously, I have a base of things that I do that will be, you know, major newspapers. I like to use Twitter and platforms like Flipboard to make sure I'm connecting to two things: stuff that's hot, that's getting talked about a lot, but also that I get connected to ideologically to the different points of view in terms of what's driving an argument. I mean, I cover Washington, so it's a lot of argument. So I want to make sure I'm thinking about ideas. You know, there's pure information that I'm trying to gather, and sometimes it's where am I going for ideas. So I'm reading a lot of op-eds. I'm reading a lot of, you know, points of view from different sites. So, yeah, that's a lot of what I do. I look to some weekly magazines like Time and The Economist in the week that I like to just make sure I'm not missing things, or to think about something a little bit more broadly. But, you know, I'm also in a unique position where I may be looking for a lot of things, but I'm also working with people who are, you know, feeding me sort of on a daily basis with things that they think I should know.
And what do you do to give your brain a rest from Washington and the news?
Well, that's kind of easy for me. I've got 3 young kids. My wife is a wonderful lawyer, so she's very busy, and my kids are really into sports, and you know, helping to manage their lives could easily, you know, be my full-time job, and my wife and I really split it. So, you know, so that part is easy. It's just sort of delving into that part of, you know, my life, and it's not necessarily giving me a huge rest, but it's a different kind of zany activity.
And we heard you like to dance. So like, what song or band makes you like clear the dance floor? I'm
kind of like, you know, 80s, early 90s hip hop and rap would be my biggest thing to dance to. That's really, I mean, my musical tastes get a little bit more varied than that, but that's really the stuff, you know, that I'll listen to. You know, so yeah, I mean, that goes back to generally that time period. I'm not quite as good on most of the current stuff as my kids will point out, but I like some of it. But we even do sometimes, we do this dinner party, my wife and I, where, you know, we'll have lots of friends over and do a seated dinner, and by 10 o'clock I bring in this DJ who just does old school rap and hip hop, and we clear the whole house, and it just becomes a huge dance party. So
love it.
You gotta have fun. That's my idea of a good time.
That's awesome. What do you love about your job?
You know, that I get to talk to the people who are the big movers and shakers in politics and in policy, that I can talk about foreign affairs. That I've got the ability to try to do 2 things. One is to get some depth. So we're not just on the news, but we're trying to go deeper. We're trying to get to a sense of understanding. But that I can also be an ally for the viewer out there, and I can try to call people on stuff on their baloney instead of saying something else. But that I can try to figure out, you know, how things work for people who are watching, and then I can just, you know, I can hold people accountable for decisions they're making or not making, things they're saying or not saying. So I have the ability to go one step below, which is what I think is the gift of Meet the Press for anybody who's done this job. And you know, it's stimulating. I just have the great vantage point of doing a job that satisfies my endless curiosity, and that's really stimulating because we get to that level of depth. So I just couldn't be happier.
And what's next for Meet the Press?
Well, I think that we want to keep building on a strategy to figure out where Meet the Press is going. I think we can't stand still. It's a 66-year-old program that's going to keep looking for ways to evolve. It's going to keep trying to reach a different viewer, a younger viewer, while obviously staying true to the core and to our mission. But I think it's also a goal of ours to become a 7-day-a-week brand, and Flipboard is part of that. How do we have a connection with our viewers that goes beyond just Sunday? I would say Sunday morning, but it could be Sunday anytime during the day. We know that people are watching a program like Meet the Press differently. They're not, just doing it in the morning. They may be watching it online and so forth. So we want to be able to reach them in a way that works for them and still makes them feel like that it's an appointment that they need to make.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, David.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.